All right. Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to another one of the. Technically, it's a pull up Trey episode. Technically, not, because Trey's not really here. But we're talking Raptors and doing so after a loss to the Minnesota Timberwolves, which has turned the Raptors into one and a bajillion. They don't beat good teams. They don't beat top 10 teams. They don't beat top 6 teams. They beat the beatable teams and they lose to the teams that for them can't be beat. It's actually astounding that the one win they got is against the Thunder when they had Shea. It wasn't even, one of those games where he was missing. It was Jalen Williams wasn't there, the All NBA version, and neither was Hartenstein. But I tell you, impressive stuff from the Raptors on that one night, that one fateful night. Also, this episode is a presentation of TuneBet Online Sportsbook and Casino. Thank you for tapping in with us. This is such an interesting team. Never in my life have I covered a team like this before. In some sense, the 2022 or 2021-22 and 2022-23 Raptors were similar in that you have a team that has talent on it, that is sitting in the middle of things, right in the thick of it, that is significantly limited by its jump shooting. And there was a more voluminous vehicle to jump shooting on that team in Fred VanVleet, although not as accurate as Emmanuel Quickley has been, and of late, very accurate. But that team also performed worse defensively, despite having more defensive talent. That team had these terrible relationships that were festering between, players in front office, players in the coaching. Well, not really the coaching staff, feels unfair, but the coaches or the coach, the head coach. And that was after a few years, and there was that championship residue. And now, obviously, those guys have gone on to other places. This year, it is so unique in their inability to beat good teams. It is so unique in the fact that you can't even look up and down the roster, really, outside of Colin Murray-Boyles, for a huge developmental win going on this season. And it's not even like Colin Murray-Boyles is doing something any, drastically different from what he did as, a college player. He's mostly been that guy. The thing that's really surprising is that nobody is popping off the bench. And nobody is giving you these exciting storylines to follow. There's no randomness to this team. It feels, quite frankly, like chalk. And that is, one of the, Will Smith says it in chat. He says, this team hasn't been fun to watch for a month. It's hard to disagree with that. You know what I mean? Like, this is a team that, how many times do we say it? They don't beat good teams. It's really tough to be compelling if you're only beating teams that are quote unquote worse than you in the standings. And I guess, the thing is, there's nothing more compelling than a team that will drop a couple to really bad teams, but also seems to punch up against the best of them. It lets you lean into this idea that perhaps this team they haven't tapped into it yet. But when I watch these Raptors, I feel very much like they have tapped into so much of what they can do. And maybe I'm just not seeing it properly. Maybe I'm missing something. And of course I could be, I've missed many things in my life. I suspect I will. But this is what, S responded to me, because basically what I said was that I don't think that the answer for this team lies at Darko's feet to find the right rotations. I've long held this belief that, fans over-index on what lineups are out there at what time. Like that, if a coach just put the right guys on the floor, then the team would be good. And this is supported by going and looking at on-off numbers or plus minus. When coaching is not, that's an accessible way to understand it, but it's not really about what lineups did you choose. Coaching is about when the guys are out there, what are they running, what are the principles, and how good are you at getting them to play to those? And then there's shot making, which is variance and all that kind of stuff. How good is the team that was given to you, and how do you build that team? How do you, design that team according to how it was built? Sometimes those things are very close in alignment. Sometimes they're not that close in alignment. So S responds to me and he says, I wish that they could just figure out the spacing next to these two-man actions you talk about. And I tell you, and I say to him, I don't think this is a team where you just find spacing. I think you have to invent it. To this I say, Raptors fans, you're not going to find the spacing on this team. You have to invent it. You have to be harebrained scheming. You have to come up with something truly nasty and terrible to try and figure out your way to inverse spacing, or you just have to hope that guys that haven't shot the ball all year suddenly figure it out. And to that I say, grab a shovel and let's figure out how deep this thing goes. Because I don't even think we found the loam, brother. I don't even think we found the loam. There's so much left here. There's so much left here. And the thing is, the Raptors have a coach who wrote, scholarly articles, co-wrote by Quinn Snyder, on how angles in the pick and roll are one of the, most unseen advantages in the NBA, in the game of basketball, and how you can mine advantages from the smallest things. And a lot of coaches think this way, but if there was a coach who's going to be able to take the Raptors' two-man actions, which are left wanting, and create something a little bit more special out of them, I believe it would be Darko. I think that he's done a really good job of tying together the roster and the defense so far. I mean, they probably just fell behind Minnesota for ninth place. Minnesota would have just moved up to eighth. They would have moved back to ninth. They're getting closer and closer to falling out of the top 10. But man, oh man, I think the defense has been impressive considering the talent on the roster. They just have to figure out stuff offensively. Geeknot says, what do you make of Scotty's scoring slump? Him not getting over 20 since before the All-Star break is really frustrating to watch. Yeah, this was, Trey and I were getting a bit of feedback. And we talked about this on the last two episodes, but honestly, not everybody watches everything. And, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail. I get it. But Scotty, the offense, I don't like to give him too much gruff because he is operating mostly within my expectations. He's maybe like a point and a half per game lower. But Scotty, in terms of efficiency and output, is really close to what I was projecting at the start of the season. But I agree with you that watching him not reach 20, watching him the game can move past him at times. It is disappointing. And one of the biggest things here is that in terms of how you build up the floor, how you align players, who gets put where, and how that helps support the two-man actions, which are trying to create these big advantages for your team, where you play Scotty has become like a really big question. Because if he's not featured, if you are going to feature him on ball, then what you're looking at is, okay, what is viable? And in most cases, that's probably going to be either an isolation against a mismatch. Did your two-man action net him that mismatch? Did he run out ahead and create, like a bully ball situation, an early work situation? Or are you giving him the ball and having a guard screen for him? Because that's going to create some sort of misdirection, mismatch, or a pass over the top of two guards playing the front end of a pick and roll. Or if the defense helps elsewhere, you can have them spray the ball somewhere. You can do that, but you're not going to run all of the plays like that, not even a majority. And I think that's probably the right decision. I wouldn't just turn the team into a Scotty plus guard screeners. Let's see what he can figure out. I wouldn't do that. And I agree with Darko not to do that. So if he's not doing that, then is he operating as the big man? He's in near the 80th percentile in his efficiency as a roll man this year. Are you using him as such? Okay. What happens when Scotty doesn't get the ball as the roll man? Is he doing a good job of loosing the ball handler for scoring opportunities? Not necessarily. So when you look at all this stuff, where do you put Scotty when you're not featuring him? In a lot of cases, he's being put in the corner to corner crash. And you see the ball funnel to him. He's shooting like below 20% for however long. It means that teams help off. It means that it's putting his teammates in tougher positions. And it means that he's just not getting to do everything he wants to do. But The offense is not just about putting Scotty in the best position. It's about finding the equilibrium between all these different players. And Scotty's inability to shoot lately has been, the Raptors are very clearly hamstrung by this, Geek Not, as you like to answer your question, the Raptors are hamstrung by this. And the easiest way to get close to 20, considering that Scotty will score some in transition every game and he'll, get some isolation opportunities and he'll do this, that, and the other. A really easy way to get closer to 20 points is to hit a few threes. I mean, how many did RJ have tonight? RJ tonight, he had 25. Went 4 or 5 from downtown. He only took 14 shots. Bob's your uncle, Becky's your aunt. I mean, Scotty, he had 16 points on 12 shots tonight. 2 or 3 from downtown. Welcome sight. A sight for sore eyes, definitely. But that's kind of how I feel about it, is that Scotty, I have personally never viewed him as a takeover offensive player. I've always viewed him as a vastly important, very impactful player, and he is. But that lack of takeover is meaningful, and the fact that he is hurting the Raptors to some degree when he's off ball offensively, the Raptors have to figure out a workaround. And that's if it's pointed at Scotty. And is this team supposed to, is what's going wrong with this team, should it be pointed at Scotty? No. In the same way where, it's game 1 against the Magic of the championship run and they lose, and Kyle scores 0 points. And you could point to it and say, Kyle was, what was he, plus 12, plus 14? And you say at that point, well, he didn't hurt the team. And you can say that. But Kyle is a star. So if he didn't hurt the team, that's not what he's asked to do. You want above and beyond. If he was a plus 14 without scoring any points, then he should have been a plus 24, and he should have scored 10, 12. That's what should be happening. You can't lay it at their feet necessarily, but you can ask for more. And I don't feel like it's unfair to look at Scotty's offensive output as of late. 16 points, 2 rebounds, 3 assists, and say, we want more. And I also don't think I would lay it at the feet of Darko and say, you're not doing enough for Scotty. I think Scotty has the ability, the cachet to go out and give you more than 16, 2, and 3. I think he does. And I don't think that's a hot take necessarily. Phoenix Plays, he says, it's like with Pascal. I don't think we ever had issues with him hitting 20 points per game routinely. Well, that's true, but Pascal he's not close to the defender that Scotty is right now. Different strengths. Also, older player. You know what I mean? Also of note, because in this game, Jamal Shead, 1 of 7. He's still under 50% true shooting on the season. B. Farn says people are starting to wake up to Shead's fake defense. It's flopping for offensive fouls, but he gets beat so much. I will say this, and then Bazooka says, do you see Shead as our future backup point guard? Small point guard that can't shoot is an extreme uphill battle in this league. Okay, so I've eaten crow on the Jamal Shead thing because I think he's figured out a lot of stuff that is important, but there's no way to get around the shot making. I have always been lower on Jamal's defense than consensus, certainly, but I do think it's gotten a lot better this year. Was he the one who got beat on Ant's big detonation on RJ Barrett? Yes, it's true, he was. But I do think that Jamal Shead, you just put it in chat, he got RJ posterized today. Jamal Shead, I do think that his defense has come around into a positive. I don't want to go too hard on that, but he has a lot of stuff to figure out. Put on your analyst cap over here. He has a lot of stuff to figure out in terms of being able to help command offense and do the thing where, yes, you want to, as a point guard, supply your teammates, do a lot of that kind of stuff, but you also, at some point, have to command the defense to change after they understand you as a scout. And Jamal probably, I don't know if that's starting now or if it's just a cold streak, but at some point in his career, he will have to reckon with the fact that he doesn't score the ball super well. And with that, he's going to have to score the ball better. Or he'll probably have teams start to treat him with a lot more disrespect in terms of how they guard him. Because he does get guarded chalk right now. He gets guarded like a lot of other guards. He gets the regular season defense. I am personally very interested to see what Jamal Shead can do to problem solve during the playoffs. And to answer your question, Bazooka, do I see Shead as the future backup point guard? The playoffs will be a huge indicator for that. His problem solving, he and we had a one-on-one interview at Summer League, and we talked about this exactly. Like we were getting into the nitty gritty of how he's being guarded, and I had all the numbers from Second Spectrum. Is like, this is what happens when you're guarded like this. This is what happens when you're guarded like this, and we're talking about what he's been working on, and he knows his limitations, and he knows how much harder it is for him to create offense if a team is going to go under, and that it creates this whole new branching tree of like, do I move the ball on? Do I try and beat it by being a shooter? Can I reject and make something else happen? There's so much stuff that he has to figure out because his path to scoring isn't as linear as a lot of more talented offensive players. But he's gotten better at things, so much so that I don't want to rule it out. So I think that Shed will continue to play on this team. He'll continue to help them take care of the ball. He'll be really important to their defensive style. And I think that's just a big thing. And he'll continue to work on his conditioning, because I also think that might be a factor for him at this point in the season. Cyrus Hahapur, or Shah Epur, I'm sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly, says, we got to play Grady. Grady has the fourth most talent on the Raptors on the offensive side. I liked Grady so much as a prospect. I think he has a lot of offensive talent, but he has to let it manifest. He has to make it manifest. I just don't think he's not giving enough right now to justify like hand wringing about his usage. He just isn't. You just have to shoot better. And if he is the type of shooter who's like, you have to give me 11 shots a game for me to find rhythm, then he's not a good enough shooter to justify that. He's not a good enough player to justify that usage as a guarantee. So he has to figure out how to do it on less volume. Grady the player, I'm not giving up on. He came out of college way earlier. Most players of his archetype take 4 years for their body, but he had so much juice in that first year at Kansas. He popped out and got a lottery pick and got millions of dollars. Good for him. He has a lot of figuring out to do. You know what I mean? He has a lot of figuring out to do. Phoenix Plays East says, every time I watch Scotty, I just picture him on a team with Jokic. This is personally, Scotty doesn't get to play with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, and Scotty doesn't get to be Aaron Gordon next to Jokic. And I don't agree with Aaron Gordon saying that. Well, actually, in some sense, I do agree with Aaron Gordon in where he's saying Scotty would be so unbelievable if you put like just an out-and-out offensive star right next to him. I think that he would be, and if he bought into that, it would be incredible. But his ceiling is just a lot higher than, as an overall player, than a guy like Aaron Gordon. But also, Aaron Gordon is probably giving you close to all-star impact when he's in there and healthy. He has just turned into, and it would be pretty interesting to see how Aaron Gordon operates outside of a Jokic-led offense now. But I mean, I think Scotty, to your point, would figure it out pretty quick. I think Scotty would figure it out pretty quickly next to a bunch of different players, and that can take us into the Brandon Ingram of it. I mean, Brandon was really poor in this one, but he was really great against the Knicks. And while, the second half against the Knicks was obviously not incredibly good, he was still, I think, so great. And it's just up and down. It's something I'm watching for really intently because I wrote a piece about this. We talked about this. A lot of Ingram fans were trying to get me alive to the idea that he is a very strong post All-Star break player. And when I was looking at the numbers, he had one he played really well post All-Star break once, but I didn't even see I only went back 5 years because I was like, the last 5 years. And I'm really interested to see because I see people making jokes. Arvin says Raptors are making other teams in the NBA more highlights. Your team is trying to make the play-in. Yeah, here's the thing. And other people are saying, will we be a play-in team? Will we be in the playoffs? The big thing here is that the Raptors have, I think, 10 games against really strong teams throughout the rest of the season. And there are some teams in the play-in slash just close behind the Raptors that are ramping up right now. The Hornets are obviously the big one. They're playing some good basketball. They're shooting the hell out of that basketball, as Trey would say, shooting the piss out of the ball. And so the Raptors, the big thing that will keep them in the play-in, I suspect, that will help is that they have their defensive structure and like floor established pretty well. And Brandon being, I think, sensational would probably keep them in the fifth spot for sure. But if Brandon is just like good and strong, I think that they will mow through enough of the bad teams because he just establishes that, offensive floor to score enough points in a game and then really rely on your defense. That's the Brandon of it all. And I do think like one of the big things I'll be watching for, and it's not something we get a lot of, but and actually think it was something we got more often earlier on in the season, is the Brandon Scotty two-man game. I have not seen a bunch of it lately, but in the second half of the season, I am really interested to see second half, it's like the last quarter even, how the Raptors use those guys. I wrote in my piece just before All-Star break got started again. I said that, the Raptors, one of the clear ways that they can get better on offense is just to present Emmanuel Quickley the exact same shot diet he has been getting and expect it to be better. And it will be better, I think personally. And the fact that Jakob Poeltl comes back and he and Emmanuel Quickley have run a great pick and roll this year. I think that Lewis wrote a fantastic piece about those two and their pick and roll. It just came out this morning on RaptorsRepublic.com. That's a big thing. But I do think it is Scotty and BI, you got to be able to play your two best players together, not just on the floor at the same time, and not just like we have these two really strong players. We use each of them to carry offensive lineups. We stagger them. No, you need to figure out some two-man actions that put pressure on teams because it's Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes playing together. You need to figure out how that works for your team and what that looks like. I just that's a huge part of the back end of the season. Not only for the Raptors in the short term in the run to these playoffs, but Brandon he has one more guaranteed year after this one, and he's very meaningful to this team in whatever happens in the next couple of years. Very meaningful. You know what? There's, Phoenix Blaze E says, there's a reason we didn't see Kawhi PG two-man actions. You have two similar wings. It's an easy switch. Aha! But we did have a lot of Pascal, Scotty two-man actions. And they scored the hell out of the basketball in those actions. I spent a lot of time tracking this and then going to Second Spectrum and then going into the film. I've talked about this a decent amount this year, and then given the comparisons. But a big thing is that, like two similar wings does not mean that they are as good defensively as the other. Somebody is going to get the weaker defender, and you get to move the stronger defender to one side of the floor or another. And does that mean it breaks down into isolation? I don't know. But maybe it becomes duck-ins. Maybe it becomes like you're running flex with it as well. There's a bunch of ways to skin a cat. As well, it's not exactly what Dwayne Casey said, but Dwayne Casey has said things like that. Like, for example, it's two similar-sized wings, right? And the Pascal and Scotty actions were really good. But it's not two similar-sized guys. The Scotty plus Jakob things were terrible because it was usually a push switch, and Scotty was not as good at beating the big as Pascal and Scotty were at beating the guys who guarded them. It's not always a one-to-one. And I think that there's more room for Brandon and Scotty to make plays together. And that's just something that's on the table. That's something that's on the table. Will Smith says, I'm not signing that extension early for BI. Well, he's on for what, like 40, 41 next year, and then he has a player option for like 42, or well, I don't even remember what it is. I don't remember exactly what it was. However, I it'll probably be up to Brandon, and by the time he's done his extension, what'll it be, like 32? I guess we'll see. That's a long way off for this team, and considering that like the Raptors they want to the Raptors want to pivot from the middle and build from the middle, and smart teams do successfully do this from time to time, and it requires really great talent identification, not only in the draft but of course in the trade market. And so Devo Morrison says, "What do you think about building from the middle versus full scale rebuild, and why do you think the Raptors chose the middle versus full scale?" Well, I think that the Raptors really believed that Emmanuel Quickly was more so of the Tyrese Maxey ilk rather than maybe closer to the Kobe White ilk that he currently occupies. I also think that the Raptors were fully bought in on what Scotty was doing to that point in the season. I mean, let's just go pull up Scotty's stats in that early part of the season because and another thing here too is that people thought that Scotty's numbers were actually lower when he made All-Star in his third year because the conventional wisdom at the time was actually that Pascal was suppressing Scotty's numbers, and once Pascal was gone, that things would pop. And if we go, Scotty, when Pascal traded the January, his last game was the Bulls, maybe? No, that was his first game gone. Okay, so Scotty in the 41 games, wow, half a season right on the dot. He was shooting 37% from three at that point, 20 points, 8.5 rebounds, 5.6 assists, 2.8 stocks, 37% from three. He's shooting 54% inside the arc, 75% from the free throw line. I think the Raptors were looking at that half season as like, this is the floor now, and he'll only be getting better from this point on. And obviously, some aspects of he also the pick and roll stuff was really good for Scotty in that first half of the season. I remember doing coverage of it. I think that the Raptors were looking at that and expected him to be a little bit more viable running traditional offense as like a wing. And so that made Emmanuel Quickly seem like a really, really great fit with him. I mean, it's in the Open Gym episode. They were just ecstatic about the pairing of those two. And the irony of it is, we're what, over 2 years later, they haven't figured out how to use Quickly and Scotty together. They haven't figured out how to use those two guys together. So, like, these guys don't run two-man actions very often. They don't connect that often. Of course, they play together and they do have complementary skills, but in two-man actions, they haven't figured out anything. And I think the conventional wisdom is that, like, the Raptors would shred teams with these guys' two-man actions, you know? And is that a misidentification of talent on what they thought Quickly was? Is it a misidentification of talent on what they thought Scotty would be offensively? I don't know, but it's something in there, right? And that's kind of where we're sitting at with it, is in terms of like why they sped up the rebuild is because they had a third-year All-Star wing who was looking like not only was he a very strong positive on offense, but on defense as well, and saying like, okay, let's go with that. Let's support this guy. I don't even mind it. It's just that Scotty hasn't shot the three ball that well. Changing the offensive context that a lot of people thought was harming him didn't make him shoot off like a rocket. And especially when a lot of people thought like that the offense coming in, especially with Quickly coming in, Fred's gone, Pascal's gone, OG's gone, less OG, but the aforementioned players, why aren't things shooting off like a rocket? It just didn't happen. He's also dealt with a couple injuries. There's been a million things about his hand. I don't know exactly, but I think that's what it was. That's why they chose to go from the middle in the basketball sense. And then you could, if you wanted to, you could make the argument that like there was pressure from above that this team should probably not be looking at being, rebuilding for too long, that you want to get back into the playoffs, that you want to get back into a situation where you get playoff money and the team is good and you sell tickets and all this kind of stuff. And that's, I think, part of it as well. You know what I mean? That's part of it as well. If this is stressing anybody out, all this talk, you guys know what's coming. Basketball can be stressful. Your choice of beer, it doesn't have to be. Coors Light delivers mountain cold refreshment. I tell you, when the mountains turn blue, people, the beer is as cold and refreshing as the Rockies. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold certified for a smoother finish. It's plus 12 soon. Maybe some people like a nice cold beer on a hot day. It's not really hot. It's like a warm day. It's a day. You know, I don't get to do the, oh, it's so cold outside, cold beer segue anymore, which was nonsense to begin with, but you guys get it. Make sure to celebrate responsibly if you are partaking, and you must be of legal drinking age to partake, to imbibe. If you're not of legal drinking age, don't do it. That's my advice over there. You can find Coors Light near you. Visit CoorsLightShop.ca. Beer. Okay, let me see some of the comments. Raptors Republic says, bro is still going holy. It's only 30 minutes. It's only 30 minutes. I think I've done like 4 hours of this before. Phoenix Plays E says, oh, Samson, quick question. Do you think we should be switching to standard time and get rid of DST permanently? Daylight savings time? Brother, do you know where I'm from? I'm from Saskatchewan. We don't have daylight saving times in Saskatchewan. You guys need to catch up by turning back the clocks to no DST. Forget it. You guys should be like Saskatchewan. Yeah. Oh, there's an argument about Derrick Rose going on in the chat. Interesting. Okay. What else is there to talk about? We talked about Scotty, the fit. Love Merrick says BI is worthless, empty calories. I don't agree. However, I do think that it is fair. Well, actually, on the one hand, not fair, because I went and audited all of Brandon's passes and realized that the Raptors are inexplicably shooting terribly. Like, if the Raptors want to have a better offense, it would behoove them to make better shots. I guess this is where we go with it. So the Brandon comment is just cannon fodder at this point. However, Brandon has not elevated things to like an undeniable point, which would have been cool. But I don't have a lot to lay at the feet of Brandon. I think Brandon has mostly been the player I thought he would be. And honestly, like, Brandon's mostly been the guy I thought he would be. Scotty has been for the most part. Scotty shooting 29% from three. Hey, egg on my face. I thought it was going to be like between 33 and 36%. That's where I thought it would be, personally. It being at 29% is meaningfully worse. I don't enjoy that. But those guys are about where they want to be. Emmanuel has gotten about to where he's supposed to be. RJ is about where he would be. And Jakob has just missed a lot of games. The thing that's really different for these Raptors is that they have very little talent in terms of scoring depth. And they played fast, they played loose, and they got to a point that, you know, they were juicing guys, and somehow, like, the guys who are winning minutes, all the minutes on offs are through the roof. They win like crazy. You look at these guys, and all of them are like, we don't score the ball. So you're like, who scores the ball? They're like, the starters. They get the ball and they score it. We're just in the in-between. We score like 6 points per game. And you're like, man, what the hell is going on here? And it wasn't sustainable. Push came to shove, and they got shoved, man. They got pushed. They weren't able to figure it out. There's no resilient scoring on this bench. None. And resilient bench scoring is important in the same way that resilient starter scoring is important. To answer the Brandon Ingram empty calories thing, Brandon is not empty calories. It depends on your definition, because some people are really cynical about, like, well, can Brandon Ingram, if he's one of your top two players, can you win a NBA championship, empty calories, et cetera, whatever. If that's your thing, then there's a lot of players. But you need somebody who's a resilient scorer to move the chains. Brandon moves the chains. Does he have this like incredibly impactful, like he touches the ball, he steps on the floor, suddenly offense is good thing? He doesn't have that. ND says, I'm not sure if you saw my BI tweet versus top 10 defenses and top 10 teams. Send it to me and I'll look at it. I've not seen it. I've not seen it in the slightest. So, but I'd be very interested to see it. But yeah, that's the Brandon thing. So I don't think he's empty calories. But is he like a dominant offensive player? I don't think so. But that's not that important. Because if he was a dominant offensive player to that level, like he steps on the floor and suddenly everything's gravy, he wouldn't have been had for Bruce Brown and Kelly Olynyk and, a first rounder that ended up being a pretty significant first rounder, but nobody knew. Nobody knew. Dang it, Bobby. Yeah, talking like daggum Hank Hill. Oh yeah, Phoenix and Nesta asked, who would you rather have, 18 DeMar or 26 BI? I mean, for me, it's DeMar by some measure. Offensively, Brandon is definitely a more positive defender, at least to my eye. And I think that's how I view it. Okay. We're waiting on Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes net rating stats versus top 10 teams. Okay. So versus top 10 teams, Brandon Ingram is a minus 8.6 net rating. His offensive rating is 110 when he's on. The Raptors score about 114 when he's off. So they score the ball better when he's off the floor. You can answer that pretty easily by talking about scoring versus starters and bench. Scotty, when he's off, the Raptors are a 106 offensive rating, a 114 offensive rating when he's on. So +8 there, big impact. And their defensive, oh my days, their defensive rating is 113 roughly with him on and 127.4 with him off. Sometimes on-off stats, they can be a little bit hinky and you can be like, how is this happening? And the defensive stuff, I tell you, that matches the eye test like nobody's business, man. The Brandon stuff, I think, is a little bit more nuanced in terms of carrying offense against starters, taking more difficult shots, and the fact that I think Brandon is asked to take tougher shots versus good defenses and better teams because the Raptors don't have the depth of creation that they should have. They don't have the depth of shot making that they should have. That's a little bit more nuanced. You have his full outside of the Knicks. ND has cut out the Knicks from this, obviously, because Brandon has been haywire against the Knicks. So Brandon Ingram stats versus top 10 defenses outside of the Knicks, 12 games, 19.8 points per game, 3.8 assists per game, 2.2 turnovers, 47% from 2, 45% from 3, 75% from the line, 55.6% true shooting. So 3-point shooting is obviously going really well. And that's kind of where we're at with that. So yeah, Brandon, he's not done a great job, but he has a difficult job. The defense for Scotty is obviously like a huge thing. And on like here's the thing. The Scotty offense stuff is you can look and try and make sense of play style because ND says, regarding Ingram, I just wished he was better in transition lineups as a playmaker. I feel like he missed 3 interior reads to Yak. Yeah, I think that there's stuff left to be, there's meat on the bone in terms of plays that Ingram can make. And that's basically it, right? Is like you can look at Ingram and see how he scores the ball, where he's scoring from. But there is the Halliburton of it all, let's say, or Steve Nash. These are the really impressive aspects, the really impressive guys. They have like this incredible ability to impact flow, pace, and decision-making, not just for themselves, but they imbue it into the 4 other guys. And Scotty is not at that level, obviously, but he does inject something, ball movement, pace, that kind of stuff, into an offense when he's out there, and especially when they're playing kind of like a ragtag group that's getting stops defensively. You get run-out opportunities. You get to play more of like this open concept basketball. And Scotty does that. And if you get down to the nitty gritty, Brandon is obviously a more talented offensive player than Scotty. But if you want to get into like the really rote, easy, like I'm just being a dumb guy with like just a little bit of rudimentary math, the fact that, Scotty is technically, his true shooting percentage is higher than Brandon's. Brandon scores probably 3 points per game more on 2 extra shots per a game. Scotty has 2 more assists. Their offensive, output is not so dissimilar to look at one guy as like an incredible carry job and another guy as like this incredibly limited, can't do anything player. With that said, Scotty does more stuff in transition. Scotty has easier looks, but I don't think the gap is that big. But of course, to return to the thing, these guys are teammates. These guys are teammates. So they got to figure it out. SP007 says, we can get BI easier shots. Save that for the playoffs. SP, you bring this up this like 2 times in a row. Like the sneaky, like we'll reveal it in the playoffs thing. But I know you were here when Joe read that quote from Darko, where Darko was basically saying like, listen, the idea of tricking guys is a great novel idea, but the plays that are good in the playoffs are the same plays that were good in the regular season, because they are. They like this. The plays that are good are the plays that are good. When Pascal, I think it was 2023-24, when his post up was the number 1 play in terms of points per possession in all of the playoffs, it was good in the regular season as well. You know what I mean? The Jokic, Jamal pick and roll, it's good both ways. You know what I mean? This kind of stuff. I mean, Shea, Hartenstein, pick and roll, this kind of stuff. It's the 2-man actions. And I think getting these guys the reps is far more important for them to work out with one another and figure out their strengths than to think like, we're going to get there and we're going to trick them. Because I just don't think that will, Caitlin and I did this with, we were trying to game plan. We were trying to game plan for a play that the Thunder were running. And we're doing this live on the podcast. And we were trying to say, like, what is the defensive coverage you would use? And I picked a different one than Caitlin did. And Caitlin picked one that she thought was going to do a better job of getting stops over the course of time. And I picked one where I thought, based on Shea's tendencies, I don't think they will attack the correct thing here. And I think that the Pacers will be able to nullify it quite easily. The thing that happened was the Pacers ended up running the defense that I suggested, and Shea did what I thought. But it happened like 3 times, and then they saw enough, and those tendencies changed, and then had to be what Caitlin was doing. But the play was the same for the Thunder because the answers aren't easy. The thing that changed was defensively, the Pacers had to think about, like, we have to have multiple ways to stop this, and we have to mix and match, because what the Thunder are doing, their players are so good that it's undeniable, and we can't stay on top of it. So that's how I feel about it. The Raptors have to be looking for that. Now, I see everybody in the chat saying, yeah, the Raptors don't have that. Nesta says, the Raps have no easy bucket actions. Raptors Republic, who I assume is S, says buckets happen on offense, typically, yeah. Will Smith says Raptors don't have easy options versus good teams. It's true. But this is what I said at the top. Grab the shovel, dig with me, and let's see how deep this thing goes, because I don't even think we've gotten into the loam. We're in topsoil, man. Well, we're either in topsoil or we're halfway to China, and the core of the earth is arriving quite quickly, fast, expeditiously. That's what I think. That's what I think personally. Also, B. Farn says it was supposed to be Grady. I mean, yeah, like the Grady stuff is just nothing has turned out. And Grady wouldn't solve all of this, but he would have helped. You would have found yourself if he had, developed the way that you had hoped, you'd find yourself in easier situations offensively. Even that's another thing about, like, Grady is the leak out guy, and they always ask him to leak out. So when Grady's on the floor, despite the fact that the defense is worse, the offense is so much better in transition because they have a dedicated leak out guy, and because he likes to create turnovers a lot because he gambles all the time, that the Raptors offense, their transition offense, is so much better with Grady on the floor because of that play style change, that it pays off for the defense, at least in the numbers. But that's what motivates it. And the Scotty BI, all this kind of stuff is like, skill set can motivate a lot of things, but decisions and usage motivates a lot of these other things. And that is where the Raptors aren't changing any skill sets. They're changing 0 skill sets, okay? They have to work on putting guys in new situations. So grab that shovel. Grab that shovel. Let's dig. I don't know where this Raptors team ends up. As Will Smith says, they have too many games left versus tankers. However, the 6th seed isn't such a far spot anymore. That's true. The 76ers they're creeping up. They are creeping. They are crawling. SP007 says, as long as we're healthy, I'm not really worried. I get the logic in that too. I mean, this team, you don't have to. This team should be in the playoffs and should not touch the play-in. If they touch the play-in, just like it's bad news. ND says, haven't paid attention to the Heat, but their point differential is comfortably better than ours. It might be spooky. I'll tell you this much. The Raptors, they won a lot of close games early on in the season. Like a lot. And they did so because they have an incredible clutch time defense. And they never turned the ball over. And they were somehow getting enough timely shooting that they were just squeezing on by. And so they have a funky point differential. That's also the Lakers have a crazy low point differential for their own for their record as well. And they're, I think, the best clutch team in the NBA. And obviously they do it far different than the Raptors do. But yeah, anytime you're mired in the clutch differential, it's going to manifest in funky ways. You know, you hope your team can control for that kind of stuff and just be like a team that handles business. But you know, it should be interesting. If they touch the play-in, I might be team tank. Let's go play the lottery balls, LOL. Oh man, if that is the sum total of this season, that is like, of course it would be funny. Like that's a funny thing to have happen, but I think that'd be painful. You know, S and I, we both watched Tombstone, and I believe at the end, I know this didn't actually happen. You know, there's conflicting reports on the Doc Holliday, Johnny Ringo. What a great movie, by the way. There's conflicting reports on it, but you know, it was he shoots him when they're in that duel, and he says, you know, it's just too much for his poor heart to bear. It would be too much for my poor heart to bear. If the Raptors didn't make the playoffs this season, oh my days. Yeah. As S says, you know, Doc Holliday sees his toes at the end of the movie, says, that's funny. Johnny Ringo, looks like somebody just walked over your grave. I mean, maybe somebody walked over the Raptors' grave. I tell you what, if the Raptors, oh man, I gotta make a little Johnny Ringo edit. Them talking that trash. They're like, we're up and coming. It's we the North 2.0. Rah 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 rah. You know, they're like Johnny Ringo talking Latin in the streets of Tombstone, just shooting his mouth off. He's like, I'll shoot anybody. All of a sudden, you're not in the playoffs. There he is, laying down in a ditch. Tough scene. We're hoping not for that. Oh yeah, Nesta says, how long before Bobby's in the hot seat? I tell you what, if the Raptors miss the playoffs, Bobby, well, actually, I don't know. Austin Rivers it was such an insightful thing that he said, that he brought up, which was that like the easiest position and the most secure position in the NBA is the one of the tanking front office member, the tanking coach. And it's so true, man. It's so true. You know, when you're losing, everything's going to plan. And it's easy enough to sort that out. And then, like, if what you're to be judged on is the product 5 years from when you were losing, it's like, well, just give me 5 years. We have to see how this goes. Whereas, like, if you're brought in and there's a team that's supposed to win in the next 2 years, then it's like, okay, did it happen? No? Get lost, jackass. We don't have time for you. we're worried about winning, okay? Bazooka says, Samson, you going to tune into the WBC? Is that the World Baseball Classic? In which case, yes. Man, I remember Shohei versus Trout. What a treat, man. Like, what a treat. SP007 says, what if we move both RJ and Jakob to the bench? See if they can recreate that Celtics game from last season. I know we lost. I know you're a very big Jacoby booster, so I suspect, and you love CMB. I've seen your comments. The power trio, yes? With CMB in there. You'd have to be like extremely optimistic, obviously, about the Raptors' young guns. But I personally, they're human beings in that locker room saying RJ hit the bench, it's Jacoby's time, and saying Jakob hit the bench, it's CMB's time, like into the future. I don't know. I just don't know if it would fly because they're the human interactions. Vegan Grass says RJ is Canadian, so he's not allowed to come off the bench. I didn't even know that was how it worked, but I'm glad. I'm glad to have learned. Okay, also, I have to read a betting line. I have to find the betting line read thing. Don't be too upset with me. Okay. This segment is a presentation of TunyBet Online Sportsbook and Casino. Thousands of slot games, live casino at your fingertips, and a sportsbook made for Ontario. Get game on with TunyBet. TunyBet is licensed and regulated by the AGCO and iGaming Ontario, 19 plus Ontario only. Please play responsibly. Okay, so they have lines for tomorrow. And the Raptors don't play tomorrow, but they don't have anything elsewise. So let's see. The Portland Blazers versus the Houston Rockets. By the way, this is a good time for me to say that Alperen Sengun is overrated. I've been fighting this battle for some time. He is overrated. It looks like the Rockets are favored in that game by 6.5 against the Blazers. But I will say, Alperen Sengun, the thing that bothered me so much, one of the hallmarks of Nikola Jokic is his absurd efficiency. If Alperen Sengun cannot satisfy that aspect of the comp, are they just white guys who play the front court? Huh? A slick pass every now and then? And also, like, dude, Alperen Sengun was getting all this gas last year. It's the you play on a good team gas. But, like, Alperen Sengun played on a good team and had a very similar stat line to what Scotty had last year. And everyone last year was like, Scotty sucks. That was actually it. Like, I said Scotty was going to be an all-star this year, and everyone called me a dumbass at the start of the season. Everyone's like, this guy is an idiot. And, I mean, Sengun had like that stat line, but he just played on the Rockets, who are a much better team, and their defense is nowhere near. But it was like, oh yeah, Sengun is a special guy in the front court. And they're like, but not Scotty. I never understood it. I don't get the fixation. The Sengun stuff is like, yes, Sengun is pretty flashy as a player. I don't think he's that good. Personally. That's how I feel about it. Killer Cat says, never thought the Samson of a couple years ago. Oh no. Oh no. Nesty, you're killing me. You're killing me, dude. Oh Lord. Listen, man. It's above my head. I apologize. SP007 says, if you put Scotty and the Rockets in place of Sengun, imagine that. Scotty could run point guard for them as well. Okay, if he was there instead of Sengun, I think they would be much better. I still don't think he could run point guard on that team very well. I personally don't think he would run point guard that well for that team. But it would be funny if, like, Fred was still there, and then you get the Fred and Scotty, like, oh, Lord. Okay, last thing I'm going to answer. ND says, Samson, how are you feeling about us trading Ingram for Ant in 2028? Great. Hell yeah. You know, Ant still has some playmaking stuff to figure out. That was actually Actually, wait, I won't say. But he has some playmaking stuff to figure out. But man, I love watching Anthony Edwards. Um, but yeah, I'll take it, Andy. I will take it with vigor. I will take that. Um, oh oh, let's see. Okay, never mind. I don't want to read that. Anyway, Nesta says, I'd understand if you guys locked down the Mountain Dew sponsorship. It's in the works, brother. It's in the works. I keep telling the marketing, advertising, like the Nation Network has like a group of people who work on the ad deals. Like I'm not out there slinging like, hey, you want to come sponsor my podcast? Yeah, like so if they get a Mountain Dew sponsorship, I mean, brother, I'd go nuts. The things I would do for Mountain Dew, I mean, come on, I'd be doing the do. Just and again, rock climbing. I'm a mountain dude. Come on, it's too easy. Mountain Dew. I hope you're listening. It's not my job, but I hope you're listening. Will Smith says Lewis Pod on the weekend. Yeah, on Saturday we'll be yapping. Devin Landry says, "How you doing?" Doing great, Devin. Thank you for being here once again. Thank you to everybody for being here. Like the video before you get out of here. I know like the team has been incredibly formulaic, and it is like the views are down everywhere. Like I was looking at just to make sure it wasn't just us. I was seeing like, okay, is it just are we getting less views? I was like, okay, no, just like people in general are not as into the Raptors right now. It's easy to understand why. And so I appreciate everyone coming in and listening and all that kind of stuff, because it is a weird spot to watch a team that wins all the games against bad teams and lose all the games against good teams. It makes you feel like, well, what am I tuning into? S says Mountain Dew so mid. Is that a hot take? Dude, you're so wrong, man. Do you ever watch Minari? It's a beautiful movie. Okay, they came to America, and the providence of good in America at that point in time was Mountain Dew. They damn near lived on the stuff. Special. Baja Blast is goated. I swear. S, you don't know anything, man. You don't even have good weights in your gym. You're sitting there pushing 35-pound dumbbells. Loser. Loser. All right, everybody. Make sure to like the video. I appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening. Love y'all very much. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm Samson Folk. Okay. Did all the ads. Everything's good. Ginger Snap Studio says, started tuning into Raptors Republic this season. Great stuff, even though I'm melting down about the team. Ginger Snap, we are all melting down. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. All right, whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.